Hi, I'm Becky Meagher. This is Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Transitions, we go through so many transitions in our life. Maybe we're 3 years old and we want to run a fire truck or something, and then we get older and then we want to be a nurse or a doctor or what have you. And it's pretty amazing all the different things we do in our lives and change and do things that we never thought. And we're going to have a wonderful guest, but before I introduce him, I want to introduce the music that is timeless, that you've heard over and over, and then I'll introduce him.
Let it lift you off the ground. Starry eyes and love is all around us. I can take you where you want to go. Dance with me. I want to be your partner. Can't you see? The music is just starting. Night is calling, and I am falling. Dance with me.
All right, that was Music of Orleans, and one of the founding members is here today, Lance Hoppen.
Hi, Beck. How you doing?
Lance and I have been friends for, he tells me, 35 years. Through time, so many different metamorphoses. And I wanted to, his music is very famous. After 52 years, they are still performing out there. And I wanted to make this a little bit more personal than all the interviews that he's already been through. But we'll get through the beginning. Where you were born and where you how you grew up with a family of music.
Right, so I was born in '54 in Greenport, Long Island, out on the East End. Moved to a town called Bayshore. Grew up there. So my family, my parents are musicians, were musicians. They met on a gig. So there's always music in the house. There were four of us, my eldest sister, my two brothers, older and younger. All of us were trained one way or another. And the three brothers became pros at it. My older brother Larry, who was the radio voice, the lead singer of those songs in Orleans, was kind of a prodigy. He could play whatever he could pick up by ear, and had that magical voice, as it turned out. So he was preceded me in having his first band and all that, and paved the way. And my aspiration was not for fame or fortune, but I knew very early on that my calling was to be a musician, and I wanted to be a working musician. That was it. So Larry dropped out of college twice, so that was it. And when I didn't want to go, they didn't make me. So I was already working. I had my first gig when I was 14.
Wow, in high school?
In high school. I picked up a guitar and became a bass player at 12, and then I had my first gig at 14, lasted through high school. Then I was playing 5 nights a week in the Long Island clubs. And that fall, Orleans, which was a trio at that point, John Hall, Wells Kelly, Larry Hoppen, wanted to expand, and they gave me the audition, and I passed. So that's how I became. At the end of my 18th year, I joined my brother in this rock band, which was what I wanted to do all along. And then by the following summer, we were recording our first album, and within a couple of years, Dance With Me was a big hit, and the rest is, 50. We're heading into I'm heading into the 53rd year of Orleans as we speak.
So when you say it was a big hit, meaning you're like in your early 20s and you're in a group has a big hit?
Yeah, I was 21.
21.
I was 21, and 21 and 22 when Still the One was a big hit, and then
wow.
And then the next year the band broke up for the first time. For the first time. So at 23, 20, I was a has-been at 24, and we got back to, Larry and I regrouped, and then we had a hit with Love Takes Time in '79, and that was the second coming around. But it crashed and burned again in '81, and then it was really difficult for a long time. But so that story is one of rise and fall, and every time I thought it was dead, it would pop out of the coffin, and here we go again, and so that cycle recurred over the past 5 decades.
Wow, 5 decades. Wow. And so let's kind of go back to, okay, you're a has-been in your early 20s temporarily anyway, because you had a big hit and the band folded.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you're out there playing whatever gigs you can get, right? Back to bars and stuff like that?
Well, when it crashed in '77, I had a bit of a comeuppance and a humbling, and that was, I guess, good in the long run. And then I got a gig with an artist named Garland Jeffries. We were on tour, and I brought my brother into it, and then we kind of put Orleans back together, and then made another record. And then when that crashed, the bottom fell out in '81, but we quit in '84. It was like too much. We'd had enough. And no sooner had we done that, there was an event. Our first drummer, original drummer, passed away, and there was a memorial service. And so John Hall, who had left the band in '77, and Larry, they were at the memorial, and for the first time in 7 years, they were on the stage together.
Wow.
And they liked it.
The magic was happening
Right.
again.
So they said, well, let's try this again. So that was '84, and then they got me back in the fold, and we made another record, all that stuff. But I was scuffling. I was not doing well at that in the early '80s. And that ultimately led me to do other work, and my marriage fell apart toward the end of the decade.
That was the first one.
Right, the first marriage, which I'm still best friends with her. That's a great long-term relationship, but it wasn't working back then. So at the end of '88, I was really at the bottom of the barrel and looking for a miracle, and no sooner. So I put it out there into the universe, like, I really need some help here. And I got this phone call on my answering machine. It was '89, of course, answering machine. And it was Michael from Nashville, give me a call. I don't know who that was, but it was a guy and a woman, his partner, I'd worked with 10 years earlier. And
10
hadn't
years.
heard from them
Wow.
since. So they went to Nashville, became successful, had a record deal with RCA.
That was Bonnie,
Bailey and the Boys.
Bailey and Boys,
Kathy Bailey,
Bonagura.
Kathy Bailey, Michael Bonagura, and their singing bass player quit their band just as they were headed out for a 40-city tour.
40-city tour.
Opening to George Strait. Right, this is the country market now, and did I want the gig? So I left Woodstock, which is where I was living, where Orleans was born and raised, and came to Nashville in this time of year, in '89, and never looked back. So I rebuilt my life here. So that's the next phase. And
right, in Nashville.
Right. And
yes.
Then I was there a couple of years. I went on to work with Susie Boggess at the peak of her career. And then after that, then Orleans reconvened again.
The third time.
Yeah, and we went to Japan. Things happened. We played Woodstock '95.
You did an album in Japan, or
we did a couple albums
released?
for the Japanese market.
Okay.
Right?
Wow.
And Woodstock '95, that was a big event.
And that was 150,000 people?
150,000 people there in our backyard, because the next door next town over from Woodstock, right?
Wow.
Where the band came from. So a lot of stuff happened, and that went on for a while, and the band quit again in '97, came back in 2000. It was like that, you know.
Back and forth
Right.
and back and
I would
forth.
I would find myself in other organizations, right? Kaylee Rain, the band you and I know, I was in that for a year. I worked with some other country artists, Shelley Wright and Andy Griggs, and so on and so forth. Met Matresa Berg here in Nashville, and then Orleans would kick back up again, and then we would do that, and so
Wow.
so that proceeded, and I guess the big event was in 2012 when my brother passed away. Larry passed away, and that was a real catastrophic event, and could have been the end of the band because he was so important to it. So
He
central.
was the beginning, the creator
He
originally.
was the voice. People knew he was, you know, he was a multi-instrumentalist. He was very highly regarded in the musical community, and also just as a guy, you know, as a person. So I just decided quickly, within a day, not to fold. I wanted to finish the year. This was year 40. We had about 8 shows to do, and with the help of alumni, guys who had come and gone through, you know, over time, we managed to get through those gigs, and I put together a little memorial concert in November here in Nashville. A lot of artists came and donated time and talent. And that was it. I was sure we were done. And no sooner had that happened than I got a phone call from a guy I'd met earlier in the year, said, if you guys want to tour next year, I got one for you. So that became the Sail Rock tour, not Yacht Rock, the Sail Rock. And Orleans was a house band. We backed up Christopher Cross, Firefall, Robbie Dupree, Gary Wright, Player, Al Stewart. I mean, it was about 6 or 7 acts. It was a 2-hour show of 70s.
And this was touring in America?
Yep, and we did about a 20-city tour over the summer of 2013.
So you were Orleans and the backup band?
Yeah, we did it was Christopher and us, and then these other five artists or whatever. But we were the house band for everybody, including Christopher. So, so
And were
that.
you the music director of this?
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot to coordinate.
Yeah.
A lot of music.
That's actually where I found my niche. Ultimately, is that.
Because you didn't think of yourself as that, right?
Well, I knew I could do it, but working with Larry and John, and you know, particularly for those decades, they were the principals, as you know, in Orleans. I was like the junior partner. I was the kid when I came in, and they were the men, right? And so I was, you know, part of the system, but they ran the business. They made all the decisions, kind of like that. So it took a while for me to come into my own, and that happened started to happen in the '90s, and then by the time we got to 2013, I was really in charge of things. So that proceeded up until John retired from the road in 22, and I'm the last of the original 4. Still carrying on. Now, my younger brother, Lane, he was with us a couple of years in the 80s, and then out, and then has been with me ever since 2000 or so.
So he's back in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he's got about half the history under his belt, but not the early years, not the heyday, you know. And then the other guys are newer, but I'm really very, very pleased with this quintet and how we present this Orleans music, even without Larry there, or even without John there. I mean, it still has that thread, and what keeps me going at 71 is I'm not ready to retire. I've got more in me. B, we don't do 100 shows. It's not like that. We do 30, 40 a year, maybe. And the people love it. They just really like, I mean, it's a really good experience for the audience as well as the band, right?
Yes.
And that feedback loop makes it all the worthwhile to continue to go. So as long as people want to hear this music, we're happy to play it for them.
Yes, because last year I saw you play at the Franklin Theater and you're taping it, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was utterly fantastic. I mean, it just filled your soul, and the whole audience, it was sold out. And just that little clip that we did at the beginning of the show, it just grabs you. And then to have you perform this live, and that audience back and forth, that energy, it's uplifting for you, it's uplifting for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
So it's a win-win for everybody, and you're getting paid. Yay!
This is the blessing of my life, to be able to ultimately. I mean, it was challenging. There were times when I couldn't make a living at it, but it's been very. It's gifted me so much, and these days even more so. You know, we didn't make a royalty for 20 years. When Still the One came out, we never made a dime until 1996. It started to flow, and I'm not wealthy by any means, but I'm well off with that stream, and now Social Security and all that stuff. So I'm in good shape, and but it took a long time to get here, and it started really to get good for me again in my 60s. You know, I was at that point. I was saying, boy, if I knew my 60s was going to be this good, I would have skipped all that stuff. I would have got here sooner, you know.
Speaking of which, there was a time way back when you were kind of in between bands, and you totally changed and became a recruiter, did a corporate thing, and it wasn't where your soul was. But there was a time of the band, I think, was getting sued. There was a lot of gooky stuff going on, and you kind of turned to a spiritual bent, I believe.
Yeah, this was in the 80s. Again, the market really crashed in 81, and us with it. And we were heavily in debt. So we couldn't stop working. Larry and I, we just kept going, playing every little gig we could find, and everything we could make went out the window to pay the creditors. And I sunk into debt. So it was really grueling for like about 3 years. And that's why I said in 84, we decided, we're done, I can't do this anymore. So then Orleans was dead for the third time, whatever it was. And I had to find something to feed, keep a roof over my head and my wife. And the only thing I could find was direct sales. It's not what I wanted to do, but hourly wage was not going to help me. And so I undertook this job, which I was like, wow. And I was really bad at it, terrible, for a little bit. And then I excelled at it because I'm a good student. And so I started winning awards and all that, and sales records, for new guys and all that. And within a few months, I went into management, and then I started recruiting and training other people to do this work.
Right.
And became the general manager of the local office of this company.
You proved to yourself you could do something other than music, but it wasn't.
It wasn't feeding my soul.
Yes, it wasn't feeding your soul. But my question is, you got into a men's group. I believe you got into recovery. I mean, there were some steps because you were kind of at a bottom level. I believe, you were a family man. You had little kids. Tell us what was that like?
Yeah, but this is a different time frame. Right?
Okay.
So the early 80s were what I just described, and I had that sales career. And then I got that magic phone call. Then my marriage fell apart, and I was at the bottom. And then I got that magic phone call that brought me to Nashville.
Right.
At the end of the 80s. And I started rebuilding. And I met she who would become my second wife and have our 2 daughters. So that was another. But I was still under duress with economically and such, even though I was back in the music business and working. It was just, wasn't very lucrative. It was tough going with a new family. And that lasted, that marriage fell apart in the end of 95, and that's when I really hit bottom.
Okay.
That's really when I hit bottom. That's when I stopped drinking and, went into recovery. I was really the bottom. And the good thing about the bottom is the only way out is up, right? So it took a long time, but I went into the program, AA, and I learned a lot. I gravitated. I knew you from the spiritual center that we were already attending,
right?
But for several years, but I was reluctant to get into the men's circle. Like that seemed like a little bit too woo-woo for me or whatever. But at that point, it was like, I'll try anything. So it was AA. It was the circle of men. This, this safe space for men to share their burdens and their triumphs.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, you and I wound up in a book club.
Carl Hendricks book
Yeah,
study?
we were studying the nature of relationship between men and women, trying to figure it out. Because,
Yep.
this is my second divorce, so I was like, come on, please. So there were several tools in the box that I used to rebuild my life. Mm-hmm. and that's when the royalties for Still the One kicked in.
Ah.
All right, so 20 years later, Toyota and Burger King both used Still the One in their massive radio television commercials at the same time. And so the debt that we had at the label, the record company, finally, overfloweth. And then that started the royalty stream at a time when I was not working, I was recovering. I was I wasn't in great shape. That's when I was working with my good friend now, Bob Halligan, Kaylee Rain. But those gigs paid like $75. It was the love of the music, not the income. I did that for a year, but I had this mailbox money, by the grace of God, to get me through into this period. And then Orleans started up again. See, so
the phoenix rises again.
that's right. It all worked out, and that a couple of iterations up until 2011 or so, and that's when we started. That's when we were getting sued by our ex-manager, and I use the term loosely. But he didn't want to. We didn't want him anymore, and he was like a jilted teenage girlfriend. He was relentless, and
bad.
he was out for blood, and that duress was part of what led to my brother's demise. Right? It was a perfect storm of stressors on him, from all facets of his life, and
he just couldn't take being alive anymore.
Right. So in July of 2012, it was funny. It was not funny. It was odd. That morning, we were still doing normal stuff, going, emailing back and forth. We were going to go just a few days later. We were going to go into New York City and be on television. And then suddenly there was nothing. And then a few hours later, I got the phone call that he had taken his life. So that was another,
That's a huge.
talk about triumph and tragedy.
Wow.
Right?
Wow, mind blowing.
So it's one thing to have your older brother, your partner of 40 years, your mentor, your comrade in arms, suddenly disappear. It's another thing to go that way.
Oh,
And
really?
it's another dimension to it.
Yes. And then didn't you write the song that you're going to play for us right before that?
So yeah, it was 2010, I think. Larry and I were here trying to write with hit Nashville writers to try to do like a country pop crossover, because we fit, Dance with Me is right there. It's like modern country is a lot like 70s soft rock. So we wound up writing a few songs, and the one I want to play an abbreviated version of was we wrote with Sonny Lemaire from Exile.
Okay.
Okay, and Sonny's a hit writer in his own right, hits for Alabama and a lot of different acts, as well as Exile. And so Larry came in with this title and this full lyric to it, but we liked the title, and Tony and I said, that's not the song. we're not writing that song, but let's write a song on that title. And the irony of it is, it's called No More Than You Can Handle.
Wow.
It's about persevering in the face of adversity. It's what the song is about.
Wow.
Larry actually had written it about the BP oil spill. That's what. I said no, and that's not it. But we'll take it and go from there. So it was the last song I got to write with him.
Wow.
It's about sticking it out, and the irony is he was the one who couldn't hang. But when we play this live during the show, it really hits people. I mean, I get a lot of feedback, tears and otherwise, like, thanks for playing that, I needed to hear that today. I know somebody who needs to, is that on the CD? I want to take that home with me. It's like, it's a very impactful
Wow.
message. And before we run out of time, it goes like this. God never gives you more than you can handle, though sometimes it feels like he tries. What don't kill you will make you stronger, so hold on a little longer. God never gives you more than you can handle. God never gives you more than you can handle. I don't know a soul without problems who hasn't had a broken heart. Can't find a reason to hope. You're at the end of your rope. Sometimes it's just the way things are. Though I don't know all of the answers, I know enough to hold on to my dream and breathe the next breath and take the next step, no matter how hopeless it seems. God never gives you more than you can handle. God never gives you more than you can handle. So even when you're afraid, hold on, trust your faith and hold on. Help is on the way, so hold on, just for one more day, hold on. God never gives you more than you can handle. All is well, this too shall pass. God never gives you more than you can handle. More than you can handle. More than you can handle. God never gives you more. No more than you can handle.
Wow, that's beautiful. Beautiful, Lance. Wow. And you now are continuing to perform. You're out there still. And if people want to know where to find Orleans, they can just get on a website, right?
It's orleansonline.net, and our Facebook page is Orleans Music. And yeah, we're beginning our year 53 next week, and I'm carrying the torch forward.
And indeed, you are doing it so well and so beautifully. It is it's an honor to have you play here, and maybe we'll have TV number 2 someday. Well, because there's so much of your life we just packed into 28 minutes.
There's a lot to unpack. Yes.
Yes, a lot to unpack. All right. Well, Lance Hoppen, Orleans, thank you for being on the show. That's it. Transitions, body, mind, spirit.